Hi, everyone. Welcome to Activating Genius, how to get your child into a top college and set for a happy, successful life. Today we have the good fortune of interviewing Arik Jackson. A little bit about Arik. For over a decade, people have allowed themselves to be inspired and motivated by the words of Mr. Arik Jackson. His mission is to teach, inspire, and encourage all those who hear him, and to take the challenge of helping others pursue their goals and dreams. What began as passionate poetry designed to uplift the spirit has turned into the pursuit of effecting attitudes and changing conventional thought. A charismatic and genuinely heartfelt communicator, Arik truly electrifies an audience. Arik has served as the keynote speaker for such organizations as Future Business Leaders of America, Health Occupation Students Association, DECA, FCCLA, National Association of Secondary School Principals, LEAD conferences, and many statewide student council conferences across the country. Plus, his message has been televised in over 65 countries. Welcome, Arik.
Thank you so much, Sonia. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. It's rare to find someone with your experience and qualifications in terms of leadership for high school students. So we're really excited to have you on today.
Oh, excited to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the work that you do and how you inspire high school students, because teenagers are not the easiest bunch of people to inspire.
They are not. They are not. Well, for me, it actually starts back from when I was a teenager. And, just to kind of give a little bit of background, I grew up in a single-parent home. My mom raised me and did a lot of work. Like, I really just, even to this day, I take my hat off to her for her doing what she did. And at one point, my mom was working 2 jobs, so I was accountable for taking care of my sister, making sure that she got to school, and I helped her with her homework and everything. So what I noticed is, even though, in my mind, my world, my dad was not in the picture, but in my mind, I had a good life. Being in high school, I was kind of known as like the Dr. Phil at my high school, and if I was smart, I would have charged people money and I would have paid for college by then. But what ended up happening was, while I was in high school, I realized that, number one, there was so much to offer. And what I mean by that is, just authentically being myself and just being really cool and being accepted for that, and wanting to help people as a teenager, and not just other people at the school as far as students, but also teachers and things like that. I saw the difference that my words made for people. I saw the difference that, or the impact that I had on people. Some of my friends would be like, "Oh, Arik's coming in the room. You can't have a negative attitude around him," and we used to joke about that. But when I realized, one of my teachers, I'll never forget him, Mr. Bartholomew was name. He was my English teacher, as well as the yearbook staff advisor. And I was part of yearbook, but I wasn't like a leader or anything like that. And one day he came to me, he's like, I know what you go through, taking care of you and your sister and just kind of holding things down for your mom. You're one of the greatest leaders I've ever met. And I just remember in that moment, I was like, me, leader? Like, no, I don't see myself as a leader, And I actually told him that. I'm like, I don't see myself as a leader. And he says, that's because you have leadership attached to a title. And you having a title is not required. There's a reason why their days get better when you show up. There's a reason why people like being around you. There's a reason why people will almost do anything you ask them to do, because you are a leader. I just remember walking away from that conversation, honestly, kind of thinking with that, like, I'm not the president of the student council, or I'm not on the basketball team. God forbid you put a basketball in my hand, it will not go well. Mm-hmm. But I just remember fighting with that, and then, it took my mom to kind of seal the deal, and, she was like, what, thanks for running home when I'm not here. And I just remember clicking, wow, like, I am a leader. And I won't even say I said it in those words, but the fact that I was being recognized as a leader without having a title or anything, that stuck with me. And as I grew up and as I started taking on things in my life from different jobs and different positions and even in college and things like that, I really saw that I wasn't the conventional type of leader. I wasn't the one who had the title. I was just the one who showed up and made a difference. And in doing that, I saw other teenagers as I was growing up, even as I became an adult, who were just like, I don't make a difference. I don't feel like I'm a leader. But, one girl, for example, who I met in Georgia, literally, I spoke at her school and I talked a lot about leadership, and she walked up to me and she's like, I just don't see myself as a leader. And I'm like, well, why do you say that? She's like, well, I'm not a part of any of the clubs or anything like that. I want to be, but unfortunately, my mom is strung out on drugs, and I have to take care of my little brothers and sisters. And so I'm kind of running things while she's trying to get it together. And I looked at her and I said, hey, you don't consider that being a leader? And so it's this message of letting everyone know, especially teenagers, especially with what they're dealing with nowadays, Sonia. I mean, I know back in my day, and I guess I'm telling my age, but social media wasn't as prevalent as it is now, but it's a huge thing for these kids. And, unless you're rocking the six-pack, you have Fendi or the Michael Kors bag, and you look a certain way, you're not seen as a valuable person within society for some people. But it's a lot of those people who above those norms and rise above those norms, who I see as leaders every day. And till the last breath in my body, I will make sure that every teenager, whether they are someone who's in student council or whether they're someone who takes care of their mom who's going through an illness, I want them to get that they're still a leader.
Yeah, well, I really like that. I like the fact that, you were talking about how you were recognized as a leader, even though you didn't have a title or anything. And I think that's really the essence of it, because there are so many people who do influence others in a positive way and uplift people like you did, and they don't have titles. And so it's interesting because, when I work with high school students, everyone's wanting to be the president of the club so that they can put that on their resume and get into college. But I think admissions officers are beginning to see beyond just titles, and they want to see more. They want to know, like, what is the student's real strengths, and when they had a position, did they actually do anything, significant, or was it just holding a title? So I think that's a really important point.
I agree. And I just want to add one thing. I love what you're pointing to with the admissions counselors. And I think this is very important, especially not only for students but for parents to know, because I have met kids who get stressed out about trying to get that position and get that title. And when they don't get it, it like destroys their world. And it's just like, people are looking for something beyond that nowadays. And I personally know some people who work within the higher education, and the things that they're looking for, like they're looking for what difference did you make in your community. And they're also looking for students. They're saying, did you only do this because you had a title, or did you do this because this was aligned with the value in your life, or this is just something you wanted to do? So I'm really starting to see a trend. They're looking for people who just want to make a difference, whether they have a title or they don't, and they're actually taking the steps to make it happen.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, when I work with kids, I think one of the hardest things is to help them to understand and to think about what their values are, because they usually don't get that kind of question. So how do you actually help students in that process?
One of the things that I've learned, I call it my golden question, and it's something that I ask all across. I'm actually in Georgia right now, and I'm going to be speaking at the state capitol tomorrow, which I'm really excited about, to students who are really looking to affect change. But one of my main questions that has them help identify what their values are, I'll ask a simple question, and I'll have anyone like you or a parent or a teacher ask a student this, and the question is, what's important to you? And just ask that question. And when you ask that question, go silent. Don't try to help them with the answer. Don't try to say, oh, well, I know you like cooking, so is that what's important? No. Ask them, what's important to you? and sit back. And I could tell you now, either one, some people are going to jump right on top of it and say, what's important to me is that kids don't go through what I went through witnessing domestic violence in the home. Whereas most of them will struggle with that because in today's society, that is not a question that they're asked often. In school, the questions are, what's your GPA? What did you get on your ACT? What did you get on your SAT? What schools have you applied for? That's the languaging. And not that anything is wrong with that. I think that is great. However, the big missing piece is what's important to you. What is important to you? And some of them are going to struggle with the answer, but in that moment, and I'll say this especially for parents, if you ask your son, your daughter this question, you have to exercise the patience because, as parents, parents want to, help them out, make it easier for the child, but let them do that work. Let them sit in the question of it. What's important to you? And if they say, well, cars are important to me, okay, great. Why? Follow it up with why, because what happens is when you hear the why, you start to either get that they're very sincere about something, you hear why they're connected to it, or you could just kind of call them out if they're just kind of just giving you an answer just to give you an answer. So that is the question. I've used that question for years, followed with why, and it's a 1-2 combination. And, I've seen a lot of kids answer it right away, and I've also seen a lot of kids struggle with it. But having them be willing to struggle with it, you give them the space to be able to really address what's important to them. And sometimes it doesn't take an immediate answer. Sometimes they have to work through it. And I think that gets them into that critical thinking space. And even if they don't have a solid answer at that point, that question is going to linger with them.
Right. Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. I've had that come up a lot in the interviews I've been doing is, when you're talking to a teenager, ask them good questions. So that seems to be a theme that's come up quite a bit in this telesummit. So it seems like that's something that works with teenagers because if you just try to, like you said, if you try to put words in their mouth or don't let it come from them within themselves, it really doesn't work, especially if you're going to give advice and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, and we're quick to be like, oh, I saw you drawing. You are fabulous. You're going to be the next Van Gogh. But really what's important to them is that, people have access to education or something like that. So, giving them the answer. And unfortunately, we're kind of in a society now where they are used to being given the answer. So it's like, oh, give me the answer. Okay, great. This is the answer. No, work for it. It's okay because at the end of the day, if they work for it, they get to take ownership of that moment when they start taking the steps towards fulfilling on what's important to them. They get to own that because they came up with it. And it is nothing more amazing, nothing more magical, nothing more impactful than witnessing a teenager really own the difference that they said that they want to make. It's just something that continues to move me to this day, every day when I see it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It is a beautiful thing, really, when that is woken up in someone, in a teenager, because they can do so much. I mean, the potential is really unlimited when you think about it. When they put their attention and will towards something and their whole heart and soul into it. Definitely. Tell me a little bit, Arik, about I know that you speak at a lot of different conferences with student bodies, and you speak to a lot of high school students, I think, in large groups. But what are some of the main issues that they struggle with that they ask you to address in the work that you do?
Well, a few things. Number one, our teenagers nowadays are dealing with some issues that I probably couldn't even fathom being young when I was back in high school. For me, it was like, and this is really telling my age, but it's really like, oh my gosh, I didn't get the latest Nintendo. Like that was the big thing. But, for kids nowadays, you're dealing with addiction. And it being hidden from the parents, and not just addiction by the kids, but also parents dealing with addictions and things of that nature. Another thing that I'm noticing is some serious traumas happening with kids. I was, where was I? I want to say Texas. I was Texas speaking at a middle school conference. Wasn't even high school, a middle school conference. Mm-hmm. And there was this young fellow, very amazing. He stuck out to me, and afterwards he came up after my speech, and he's like, I just don't know if I can make it. And at that time I posed the golden question, what's important to you? And he was like, that people heal, that people get the care and medical attention that they need. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean to you? He's like, I want to be a doctor. I'm like, awesome. And he's like, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm like, well, why not? And so he goes on to tell me that, his mom, he was very close with his mom. His mom had a boyfriend at the time who had been around for years, and the boyfriend, I guess, dealt drugs at that time and was in the mother's car, and somehow he was busted with drugs in the car. He ended up going to jail because this was like his third strike, and then he blamed the mother about having a part in it when she didn't. And the way it all played out, the mom ended up in jail as well. And he's left by himself to be with an aunt who's elderly. And he's like, one moment I had like a mom and dad, and then the next moment I didn't. And I just don't know. I got to take care of my aunt. I got to do this. I don't know if I could, really, I don't know if I have time to be a doctor. This is somebody who hasn't even left 8th grade yet. And my heart is it was breaking. And so what some of these kids are dealing with nowadays is just at a higher level. And I think what happens is they're so used to putting on the mask when a trauma like that happens. They're so used to coming to school, don't dare show that you're weak. Don't show that you're going through something, because you become prey. You become the victim of people, bullies and different things like that. So you hold it strong to act like everything is together, but really it's not. So one of the main things that I've noticed with a lot of kids nowadays is they're dealing with some major issues, but they either don't have the resources to talk to someone about it, or they're just flat out afraid because they don't even know how to start that conversation with someone. That's something I'm definitely seeing. And then the other thing is seeing these kids authentically be themselves. Like in my speech, I have this thing where I say, do you, and do you unapologetically. But there are some kids who, depending on where they are, like if they're somebody different that they're not approved of, they get cast out and cast aside, not just in that particular friend group, but in the school, and it becomes this lonely journey. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing right now. And then the third thing is I'm seeing a lot of these kids want to make a difference. They just don't know how to start. They just don't know where to begin, because they've shared that with some of their friends, and some of the friends are like, oh, yeah, you'll do that in the future, but there's no real support behind that. So those are some of the common things that I'm seeing, and literally, I mean, from like all across the states, Canada, there's a global leadership program that I work with, so even people from different countries who are dealing with some of the same issues, which at the end of the day, it just all boils down to everyone's humanity that they're dealing with. And I'm just seeing that, and that's why the work that you do and everything that you're putting out there is so important, because the resources need to be available, and this needs to be heard.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And you're right. I know there's a lot of students out there who want to make a difference. They don't know where to start. What advice would you give to someone who, let's say he wants to help other people, like this young man who wanted to be a doctor? I know he's in a special situation where he doesn't have his, parents around to help. But let's say it was just a student who did have kind of more of an ordinary household situation and family life was stable, but they wanted to make a difference. What would you tell them about where this person should start?
So I would say the first start is, number one, start sharing with people the difference that they want to make. If you are looking to be a doctor, Start having your friends call you Dr. J or Dr. Arik or whatever. Just it's little things like that, like, okay, chef, and that was one of the things that worked so well with my friends. Even to this day, I have childhood friends who, they look at me and they're like, man, we knew this was coming. And I'm like, why? Because they were like, you used to tell us to call you Superstar. Like, that was your name. And I'm like, yeah, it was. And they're like, yeah, that's what we called you, and that's what you became. But what happens is when you share the vision with someone else, and not just anybody, like, just don't go to Bob on the corner and be like, hey, I'm a doctor. But, those friends who you trust, the family members who you trust, and, they believe in you, and you share it with them like, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor. Kind of laugh about it. Have fun with it. Say, all right, call me doctor, because what happens is you now have this support of people out there when in the moment when you're ready to give up, they will call you back to what you want it to be. So if you're like, yeah, I want to be a doctor, and you start having that conversation, and then they see you out there like acting up in the streets or something like that, they'll be like, just didn't know a doctor would do something like that. So it just kind of propels you into this space of being called what you want to be. And then the second thing, I highly, 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 highly recommend for any teenager, if you've done it, do more. If you haven't done it, do it right away. But volunteering. Volunteering is such an access point for people who want to make a difference, because what happens is you align yourself with people who want to make a difference. Volunteering has been a pivotal turning point in my life. I did the different activities at schools and stuff like that, but the very first time I volunteered, I was in high school, and it was for the Special Olympics. And I was a coach for someone who was an athlete. And I just remember, I remember me in the moment, but I really remember the difference that was made for the athlete that I was working with, because he had someone in his corner. He felt supported. He felt like someone was there for him. And what happens is when you volunteer around a great cause, you see the impact that it has on other people. And in seeing that, whether you're a teenager, whether you do it as a parent, whether you do it as a family, my family and I have volunteered together, and it makes a huge difference, because you get exposed to, it's one thing to say, oh, I want to make a difference. Anyone can say that. Yeah. But it's something, and I keep saying magical. I don't know if Mickey Mouse is hanging around me somewhere or something like that, but it's something magical when you become a part of something that's actually changing someone's life. It's no longer words, it's action, it's palpable. You can see that person. If you're feeding someone at a kitchen or something like that, you can see that, the plate that you just gave them is bringing them joy, bringing them happiness, bringing them health, bringing a tear to their eye because they hadn't eaten in days. You get to experience that. And that's why volunteering is so huge. And, the organization that I work with, Count Me In, we're the world's largest youth-led organization and charity, where we have clocked in close to like millions of volunteer hours. And everyone who's connected to that, they get to see the difference. They get to experience the difference. So those are the two things I would recommend. And I know I kind of went on and on, but I'm very passionate about that. Number one, have people start calling you. If you're going to be a singer, have them call you a singer. If you're going to be a doctor, have them call you a doctor. If you're going to be an attorney, accountant, a chef, we love great chefs. If you're going to have them start calling you that, And then number two, get out there and start volunteering. And your volunteering doesn't always have to be in alignment with what you want to do. Just do the volunteering, something that's important to you, so you get to experience the impact of actually making a difference in someone's life. Because once you do it, you won't want to stop.
I really appreciate what you also said about volunteering together as a family, because I feel like that's really key, especially, I mean, you can try to do things on your own as a teenager, and sometimes maybe that's better for, depending on who it is. But it's also nice to do things together as a family, and it shows that your family has the same kinds of values and supports you. So that's really nice, Because so often I hear parents. Yeah, it does. Yeah, and so often I hear parents say, "Well, we just don't have much time together because my kid's busy doing homework and extracurriculars." But this is a way for the family to do something together that's also important. Yeah.
Yeah. And for the parents out there who are listening, I understand, schedules are busy. There's a lot of homework. There's a lot of tests that the kids have to prepare for. But if you go into each year saying, this year, as a family, we're going to volunteer a total of 10 hours this year as a family, and you actually schedule the time. Don't make it a second thought. Don't make it an afterthought. Like, really be intentional about it, and how I know this, I live in Sacramento, California. Most of my family lives between Chicago and Madison, Wisconsin. And so we just recently did something together, and we came together as a family. And, I love my mom. I love being with my mom. But it was something about myself, my mom, my sister, my niece, all of us coming together to do this event where we actually volunteered and, we poured into each other. That brought us together as a family. Number one, there's just a whole new level of gratitude that you have for the things that you currently do have. And look, families, all of us, most of us, if you're anything like my family, you might be a little bit off and a little bit dysfunctional, but the beautiful thing about it is when we come together, it's just something so beautiful. And it's that moment of stepping away from all the chaos of every day to say, Mom, I love you. I appreciate you. Sis, I miss you. I'm so glad we got to do this together. And then turn to my niece and say, you see how you made a difference for her? It's pretty amazing. So to be intentional about that as a family, make it a standard, just like Thanksgiving dinner for some people. Why not incorporate a couple of hours either before Thanksgiving dinner or after Thanksgiving dinner to go to either a homeless shelter or someplace in the area and, help feed others. I guarantee you, if you're looking for something to bring your family closer together, if you're looking for something that's going to just give you a boost of gratitude and gratefulness within your family, volunteer together as a family. It makes a world of difference.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea, really. It's and it's so important because doing things actually doing things together and connecting in a meaningful way, that's what I'm hearing is so needed by everyone because of all the social media and the addiction to technology and so forth. We're missing that. So unless you sit together, consciously have a dinner together, everyone might be eating on their own or something. So consciously planning these kinds of volunteer opportunities and activities seems really key. Yeah.
I agree. I agree 110%.
Yeah. What other advice would you give to someone who is feeling like they're alone and it's hard for them to connect with others even though they want to? A lot of kids these days are shy, or they're just very sensitive to, going out and making themselves available to others, and maybe fear of rejection and things like that. But I know a lot of kids want to do things. They want to make a difference. They want to do activities with others, but they don't feel like they have what it takes. Maybe they think they're introverted instead of extroverted, or whatever limitations they believe in. How can you help them to overcome that?
That's such a great question, Sonia, and I love what you're pointing to, because there are a lot of kids who are, looking around at school and like, man, I'm not like everybody else here. I don't like to be loud, or I don't like to do this, or I don't like to do that, which I get. And, I could say, get out of your comfort zone, and to some degree that only goes so far. But a comfort zone, if we want to equate it, we could say comfort zone equals a box, right? And instead of, getting out of the box, I say destroy the box. And here's how you destroy the box. If you're someone who is at your school and you're feeling that you want to experience more, but with this particular group of people, the people at your school who you probably have been growing up with since you've been in second or third grade, you pretty much know everybody. The thing I would highly, highly recommend is finding a program or either a camp or a leadership summit or something like that that is not based in your own town.
Oh, I see.
You want to get around people who you don't know. And I know that sounds really crazy. But what happens is when you get into a summit or, I know some people are familiar with Snowball or Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Foundation, Count Me In Summit, Leadership Summit, the program that I run. What happens is they come into this program and they don't necessarily know the people who are around them. And instantly they're faced with a choice. And the choice is this. Either I can continue to be that quiet person, shy person in the corner, but if I'm going to do that, I'm going to own it. Or, you know what, I'm going to stand up and be the person that I want to be, I've been wanting to be, but I was afraid people at my school may judge me. What happens is, and I've seen it time and time and time again, Sonia, you have kids who get into a global leadership summit or into maybe it's a local summit or statewide summit or something like that, and they show up and they make this choice, and what happens is they get to experience themselves authentically for the first time. And most of the time, it's an amazing feeling. They're like, oh, my gosh, like I get to be me. And they're not having to be that under the pressure of, oh, well, that's Sally. She's always been like that since I've known her since second grade. Right. Oh, John has always been quiet since I've known him since kindergarten. Because what happens is, and I don't think communities do this intentionally, but the community looks at someone over a period of time and they kind of cast them into a certain role or how they're going to be and how they're going to act. But when you go into a new environment where there are people who you don't know, and then you have a staff of people who are really encouraging, almost demanding you to be your authentic self in a safe space, you get to experience yourself at a whole other level. You get to create who you are. And now you have created a support group of friends who you can stay in touch with, keep in touch with, and now you get to go home. And though it may be difficult initially for you to be the person that you really want to be, you now have a support group of people outside of your hometown, outside of the people that you grew up with, who really see you for who you are, and they have your back. So that is my biggest recommendation, like for those who, want to get out there. And I would love to invite everyone who's listening to the Count Me In Global Leadership Summit. Would love to have you, because I know that's definitely something we're very intentional with. Literally we have people who come in, I tell people all the time, and this was a real situation last year where there was one student who was from Connecticut. The person sitting to the left of her was from Italy, and the person sitting to the right of her was from South Africa. Now imagine what you get to become in the space of that. And everybody's trying to figure it out for themselves, but it's done in a safe space. And that girl, she actually just sent me an email not too long ago just thanking me for the experience and how she's gotten to, go back home and be herself unapologetically. So that is my highest recommendation.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I think that's really important. So, people can find out about this Count Me In Global Student Leadership Summit Is that available on the internet?
Yes, if you go to CountMeInSummit.com, and if you're a parent, you could definitely go to the website, see all the information, check out the facts section. We basically tell you what happens in the 4 days and all of the amazingness that happens. If you are a student and you're interested in this, Sonia, this is what I'm going to do. For those who are listening to this program, I am going to offer a full tuition scholarship for someone to attend the Count Me In Global Leadership Summit. And here's how they can apply for it. If you go to countmeinsummit.com/apply, APPLY, go there, complete the application, and say, I heard Arik on the program with Sonia. And I'm sorry, the Genius. I keep calling it the Genius program. I know I'm calling it
Genius. Yeah.
Activating Genius. I love Genius. So I heard Arik on Activating Genius, and once you do that, put that in your application. What will happen is once we get the applications in, we will go ahead and make an announcement letting the person know who that person was, and we would gladly have them at our Global Leadership Summit just to experience exactly what I talked about.
Wow, that would be amazing. That's quite amazing of a gift that you're providing. Thank you.
I'm glad that I could give it. And I mean, what you're doing, anything that we can do to support what you're up to, what you're doing is amazing, and what you're doing is so needed. I think this type of information, these type of resources, parents are thirsty for it. Students are thirsty for it. So to be able to provide this, anything that we can do to support, I am all about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Arik. It's been wonderful to have you participate in the interview. I've learned so much myself, and I feel inspired. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for this and for that wonderful gift. And we look forward to, staying in touch and learning more from you in the future, too. Thank you.
Awesome. Anytime, Sonia. And, again, if you're listening to Activating Genius, keep listening. Listen to all the other podcasts. I know I'm turning all of my people onto this because this is some amazing information, and it's definitely needed in this day and time. So, Sonia, just thank you for just taking the initiative and making this happen.
Great. Thank you, Arik.